And Jay back with the America is Red, White, and Blue podcast for the last time as the America is Red, White, and Blue podcast. Difficult day out there on the pitch for our boys in blue. No secret, very disappointing situation. But nonetheless, man, it's still the America is Blue podcast. So per usual, you get the first word around here, man.
I'm going to start by look at this swag.
Yeah, bro.
Look at this hat. This hat looks great. So thanks for hooking me up with that. It was an unfortunate ending for what was a really exciting run for the men's national team. I think as fans, we all collectively really enjoyed this. I think it was an important run for the squad, being as young as they are. To me, it felt like what we saw out there today was a bit of a letdown from the excitement and the adulation that we were all feeling by qualifying and winning the game against Iran. What we showed in those first three games was sharpness and aggression and energy. The finishing has been a problem throughout, but the guys, I mean, their motors were running and they were sharp and they weren't making the type of mistakes that they made today. So I think there was a little bit of that letdown that happened. We made mistakes. They capitalized very efficiently and very quickly on them. So I'm disappointed with the performance and the result today, obviously. But I think, again, as fans, we should all be walking away from what we've just experienced and watched excited because there is a promising future for the boys that we just got to see.
Well, agreed on that front. Hats off to the Netherlands being clinical. I mean, both goals in the first half were, pretty much mirror images of each other. Difficult situation for us from the American standpoint, but very proud of what the guys were able to achieve. It was great to get out of the group, but now we got to start setting our sights on dominating CONCACAF and continuing to build towards this next World Cup performance. But hopefully, these guys doing this, having this experience together, will help them, continue to develop. They are obviously a very, very young team. And if we can get some striking talent, continue to reinforce, our back line with some experienced center backs with good ball skills, I think we can continue to develop and compete.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. It all begins with us becoming the dominant force in CONCACAF and making sure that we don't have any more qualifying snafus. Diving into the game today, I guess where I'm most frustrated, the lack of energy and just the difference in pace that I saw today compared to the first three games. I kind of understand that. Where I was frustrated is, we discussed what we had seen from Holland in their group phase. And again, a very pragmatic approach, a very defensive approach, 3 in the back, a lot of 5 in the back, and then looking for those opportunities to go forward. They haven't created a lot of opportunities throughout this tournament so far in now their 4 games, but they've been able to capitalize on them. I think we were outcoached. And that's not a knock. This isn't me saying get rid of Berhalter. I think just as these young guys need to learn, Berhalter is not a super experienced coach. I mean, put him next to Van Gaal. Who do you think has more experience? Van Gaal's got one foot in the grave, right?
Of different places. He's won a lot of different things. He's obviously, and classically handsome. That guy's, guy's been around the block.
That's kind of you. That's kind of you.
But no, I mean, he is a really good coach. To your point, Berhalter was a little bit above his weight class in that category, and from that standpoint. But the thing that surprised me the most was not the clinical finishing necessarily. It was at least on the second goal, the Blind goal. It was definitely the who. It was Daley Blind killing us right before the halftime, sucking the air out of everything. You go down, 1-0 going into the half. You're totally fine. You're completely buoyant. You're one moment away from being on level terms. But that second one was just an absolute killer. Absolute killer.
Yeah, and I don't want to quite leave the coaching thing yet because we were going to go out there and try to do what we do best. They were going to try to do what they do best. And unfortunately, with that matchup, it doesn't play to our strengths. It just doesn't. They were willing to allow our midfield to have the ball in the center of the park. they were not scared of us whatsoever, nor should they have been. I mean, we barely scored in this tournament. And then as soon as they got the ball turned over, then they unleashed. I thought that the selection of Jesus Ferreira, who hasn't played yet, not that he was bad today, but he didn't do anything, right? Like there weren't glaring errors or horrible mistakes, but he certainly didn't bring anything to the park. And I think we needed to take a different approach. You knew what Holland was going to do in their back, and you know how experienced and talented their three center backs are. So you needed to come up with something where you were going to be able to widen and stretch out that back three by doing overloads on one side, by playing in certain channels and gaps. And we didn't even try that. So I was really disappointed with that one aspect of it. And going back to your point a minute ago, the goal right before the half, it was the backbreaker. And it was the same mistake. We made the same mistake on all three goals. I can't blame that on coaching. I really don't want to dog him. Tyler Adams, he screws the pooch on the first one. He's just jogging. He sees Memphis right in front of him. He's just jogging. He's just trotting along, not making the run that he's made 1,000,000 times in the first three games. Leaves him wide open, cut back pass, and it looked like this was scripted on their end. They were like, all right, we're gonna create with our wingbacks. We're gonna push up. We're gonna find cutbacks at the top of the box because their defense is gonna drop deep, and we'll have free runners. And they did it on that one. Then Serginho Dest misses and lets Daley Blind get by him. And then Jedi Robinson screws the pooch on the last one and leaves Denzel Dumfries completely unmarked in the back.
It was
post.
Unbelievable.
Same mistake all three times. And this is not what we've been seeing. So it's unfortunate.
It really was. And I just, like I said, also the timing of it too, just so close to the end of the half. And
killer.
What have we been talking about this entire tournament? How there's been 15 minutes of added time every time you turn around. The first time there's a +1, we can't even get out of the half. I mean, unbelievable. Yeah. That part was just wildly disappointing. And the first time where I was like, oh, here we go, where I had that throw my hands up moment where it's like, this is where everybody else says we are who they thought they were. Being able to get the goal back certainly put some juice back in it. The excitement was definitely there. Us pushing, to equalize, but obviously that ran dry. And to your point again, Dumfries just hanging out all alone. And it's these guys who aren't known as finishers, but they all had their finishing boots on, all made completely clean contact with the ball. Memphis Depay screws up more sitters and goals with Barca and everywhere else he'd go. He's super overrated, but of course he scores against us. And Daley Blind, who, makes you look young, freaking scoring as well. Like, I can't believe it, man. It's still a little tough to take.
Well, dude, it speaks to the positions they were in. They didn't do anything dynamic. They were wide open. All they had to do was make contact, and the ball was going in. All three of them. All they had to do was make contact, and it was in. So, dude, we were messy. We were messy defensively. The midfield, which has been our strength throughout this, they didn't play like they've been playing. You didn't see that energy. You didn't see them closing down on guys. And a more technical Dutch team, dude, they just played around us. They absorbed the aggression. They waited for a guy to run up, and they just had very quick decision making. They knew exactly where their outlet passes were, and they were able to slice us up.
And that is the perfect description. We were just absolutely sliced, completely sliced open.
Yeah.
And again, like we did say it, both goals were mirror images of each other. They were ready for this. They were clearly well schooled and well drilled on that exact thing. And when you've got, again, Nathan Ake, Virgil van Dijk, De Ligt, when you have those types of center backs and defenders watching the back line, that's a pretty safe place to be and feel creative if you're an attacking player for the Netherlands.
Absolutely. So. As I was taking, just some thoughts down on this, and you're just thinking about the pros and cons. So backing up away from the specific performance, again, there's a lot for us to be excited about as we're walking away from this. And, as far as things on the positive side of the ledger, I loved our playing style. I love the fact that we weren't scared and we weren't playing bunker in football and just hoping and praying that something would go right. Like we were trying to enforce our will on the other teams, and we were trying to put our style and our stamp on each of these games. So I love that. I love the fact that a very, very, very young and talented team was able to get this experience. I mean, we had one guy on the squad who had any World Cup experience. And also, I mean, we can speak to what we saw today. I have never seen a World Cup in general. So this speaks to the sport and then also the national team. I've never seen a World Cup where I have seen more fans, we're in New York, into this. Dude, the bar we went to today was jam-packed line around the block, wrapping around the block to get in, and every single bar in Midtown was packed. So I love what this means for attention for the team, for the fan base, for people to really get behind this. I thought all of that was great.
I definitely agree with all of those sentiments, and it was an awesome experience, and you're just bummed, that's the only way to really say it. It's definitely different than a Chelsea loss or something like that, but it really is a reflection of hopefully a new reinvigoration of the fan base, and hopefully we attract some new fans to the sport and to the team, and continue to grow the game in this country, because even if we can siphon off just a few more of our top shelf athletes, it's going to make a gigantic difference.
For sure. And on the opposite side of the ledger, as great as this was, as much as we loved it, we won 1 out of 4 games. That's just the fact. The England game was great, even though it was a draw, because that felt like a win, because we were certainly outclassed there. We need to figure out how to work a set piece. It was the most disappointing part of this. Whether the deliveries were good, whether the deliveries were bad, we didn't have like one threat on any set piece in 4 games, which is shocking. In some instances, questionable player selection. Finishing was atrocious throughout. We need to find a way to either manufacture goals with what we have, or like you said, search for the talent and groom them over the next 4 years. So we have somebody up top that we can rely on. And lastly, I would say really questionable substitution timing and substitution effectiveness. Like, can you remember one game that we saw out of any of these 4 where somebody came on the field and you were like, oh, this guy changed what was going on. He made an impact on the game. There really wasn't. And it's not because of the talent. It just felt like the timing and the result of our substitutions were not great. So all in all, again, a lot to be proud of. There's a lot to be excited about with the squad. I'm going to enjoy watching them develop over the next 4 years, and we'll be back in 4 years to see how we show where we stack up against world-class talent.
No doubt. And the last thing I'll say, just at least on the positive side of watching the squad, the one thing that always made it so difficult to watch the United States was we were always struggling to get on the ball, to keep the ball. We were always just scraping and dinking and dunking and long balls and kind of sloppiness. We actually had the ball, which was one thing I will say was a gigantic improvement from a lot of the products we've been putting out over the past couple of years. And, having that ball and not have to necessarily fight for every shred of possession was refreshing to see, and that we were able to recycle, that we were able to, get the ball back to the center backs and still build up from the back and not get pinned, which is classic United States as well. We kind of gave up the early goal today, but we didn't at any other point in the tournament, which was nice to see.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can build on this, man, and continue to learn from it. But one thing I do want to also talk about is, are we going to get a different coach?
All right, so we've called out certain things that we were displeased with. Obviously, it's a success that we were able to get out of the group. I think for the future of the men's national team, we have to stop looking at that as successful. Like, we have to be able to win a couple of games in the knockout stages and show that we belong. I think it's going to be tough, but because I like the playing style, because my perception was that this team was together. When these guys won against like they were going nuts together. Contrast that against all the disruption and the bullshit that we saw on a Belgian team. So I like the playing style. What I don't want to see happen here is that we get rid of Berhalter. We bring in somebody else. Now these guys have to learn a new style.
I
maybe it's not. Maybe it's not too. So I think the continuity here. Yeah, I think the continuity here with the young squad. I think that's going to make all the difference. I think we stick with him. You can always make a change later, but I think based upon World Cup performance and now moving forward, I think we stay with it. I think we build on this. I think we get better at this. Let's see where that takes us.
I'm all with it, man. All with it. I do want to also, we're still going to talk about the man of the match, which is, as always, brought to you by All Out Fitness. And at All Out Fitness, they're inspiring individuals to be their best selves. Jay, who are you giving the man of the match to this time around?
If it wasn't for that blunder at the end of the first half, I would have given this to Sergiño Dest. I thought that he was one of the few guys on the attacking end of things who looked really sharp today. Like, he looked dangerous out on the wing early in the game, but he had an awful blunder at an awful time. So this is man of the match. It's supposed to be specific to today, but I can't. It's hard for me to not let what's happened earlier in the World Cup bleed into this. I'm going to give it to Christian Pulisic. I thought that, again, it wasn't his most amazing performance today. That finish early, I'm not going to hold that against him. That wasn't easy. That would have really changed the complexion of the game if he was able to do something there. He was able to get, he had his impact, but I'm almost looking at this as the totality of the World Cup. I think without him, we're nowhere near what we accomplished. So I'm giving it to Christian.
I mean, and that's awesome. I gave this a lot of thought. It was it was difficult to come up with somebody, but I kind of looked at it the same exact way. This was more of a lifetime achievement award of this tournament than it is the individual award. I actually have our number 10 Christian Pulisic as man of the match as well. He did show up. He obviously had to go through some stuff to get himself in a position to play, but he didn't look off the pace. I think sometimes, and maybe this is me sounding defensive, he never gets calls. He gets pushed and shoved a ton and kicked, and he's never drawing these fouls. But I feel like if it was Jack Grealish, he'd be getting the whistle. But I guess that's another story for another day.
Yeah, we're back to Jack. So, I mean, again, moving on from here, we still have plenty of Blues to pay attention to throughout the tourney. We'll certainly be around chatting about it, seeing how these boys do. Hopefully we'll get a couple of Blues in the finals. Hopefully somebody will come away with some life-changing silverware. So this tourney's not over just because we're out.
It's definitely not. And we got some exciting, matchups that are coming. Again, we got Kova coming down the pike. We got Mason Sterling still alive with the English. Hakeem is still alive. That matchup with Spain is going to be awesome. I'm really, really looking forward to that one. I think that one's going to be awesome. And we'll be back in the next couple of days to settle up with everybody and close out the accounts for the World Cup. We appreciate it, everybody. America is blue, and we'll talk to you guys next time.